Hello and welcome to Unstuck, Unlimited and Unleashed, the life coaching podcast dedicated to helping you get unstuck from your problems, unlimited with your beliefs and unleashed in your potential. You have two guides on this journey of change and discovery, Rashpal Panesar-Gipson of Act and Solve Coaching and myself, Kelly Sabrina of Ugly Coaching. In this episode, we cover what life coaching is all about. We share some personal stories and insights into change. And we give you some useful tools and hints if you're looking to bring about change yourself. This is episode 1, Change and Where to Find It. Okay, hello and welcome to our podcast.
Yay!
Yay! Two coaches talking about coach stuff. Really exciting podcast. Yeah! So I guess to kick off, we should just define coaching for our new audience in case they don't know what coaching is and what it does and why we're here talking about these things.
So I would say coaching for me is helping someone with a goal. It's helping someone to make changes. So a lot of us have aspirations. We've got things that we want to do, but there's always a but. Mm-hmm. And we work out different things that we can do to try and overcome those buts, but we're not quite getting to the bottom of what's going on. And having a life coach can really help you to overcome those buts or to find out whether those are the real issues and whether that is actually your real goal or whether that's something that you feel like you should do.
Yeah.
So life coaching can help you in all of those areas. It's about really connecting with yourself. It's led by you. And it's really exciting.
Yeah, I think I fell in love with coaching because of that feeling of stuckness. And I think we all know it so well. Those days where you get up and you feel like you're wearing a person suit, right? And that's a stuck feeling. Or you're wearing a suit made of cling film and you're just unable to be yourself and you feel trapped, stuck. And I think coaching is a great way to get out of that kind of stuckness, that really familiar, rutty, horrid feeling. And I'm completely fascinated by it, what causes stuckness and how we get there. Because sometimes when you look at coaching and what coaching does, or people tell you about coaching, like, oh, well, you set a goal and we use tools to get you to your goal. You're like, well, that sounds a bit bloody obvious. So what do I need you for? But it's because of stuckness. Stuckness is such a strange, unusual thing. And it's a cocktail of all these like little elements. And like you said, and rightly so, is your goal your necessarily your real goal, or is it your true goal? What's that feeling, and what's that feeling really, because we kind of assume that what we're thinking is true. So we say like, oh, I feel like this and it's because of this, and we make the assumption that we're right, and it's like, well, no, poke it under that, investigate that a bit more, because we're trying to make you happy, not make you right.
And we're surrounded by people who are like-minded or who might reinforce the ideas we already have. Yeah. And that's the beauty of life coaching, is that it's somebody who doesn't know you from that perspective. Yeah. They're working with you from a blank slate.
Yeah, fresh eyes. And also, eyes that are trained to be able to spot these traps and these things we tell ourselves. And, as life coaches, you get trained to challenge in a sort of ethical, caring, understanding way. It's like, I'm going to challenge you. I'm not going to hurt your feelings. Yeah. I'm not going to upset you, but I'm going to, put a little weight on to say like, are you sure? Is that exactly what it is? And we need that. And not our friend. Our friends are not always capable of doing that. They're not always in the position. That's not always the relationship,
Absolutely, yeah.
It's not always welcome, So I think there's a magic in the safe space for challenge, which is a wonderful part of coaching. It's so dynamic with that,
Agreed, yeah, totally.
I'm completely fascinated by change and stories of change and how it comes about and all these magical ways to get there. It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So,
and it's there's no one fits all. So for everyone, it's going to be quite a personalised change journey. So what you said earlier about, somebody's got a goal and you've got these tools to help them get there. It's so different for every individual.
Yeah, it's different every time. Yeah. And you never expect what people are going to say as well. It's like a real adventure when you're working with somebody new, because you surprise each other, and you go, and that's the other thing about coaching, it's completely collaborative. So it's, you know, your special collaborative critical friend is your coach, you know, and they help you and you surprise each other, and that's the magic of it, really, is the freshness and the new mix of skills and ideas, you know, and what that can change and what that can bring about in your life.
Yeah.
It's fascinating stuff.
It's really exciting.
So we're coach nerds. We love it, obviously, if that didn't tell you what you needed to know about where we're coming from. But today, especially, we've decided to talk about change, how to recognise a readiness for change and cultivating change. And I think the reason this is a great first episode, a great start, is because this is what coaching is all about. This is where really that's the heart of the work. You know, it's when you recognise a readiness for change and you act on it, that's when you might want a coach. That's when you might want a collaborative, critical friend to help you drive towards this new thing that you've identified, or just the identification of you don't want the old thing. Yeah. You know, that's enough. So, yeah.
And sometimes it's about how you respond and react to changes that are happening in your life. So a change might be how you interact with something. So it's not necessarily like getting a new job or I don't know, making something new or starting your own business. It could be like how you interact with things that exist in your life to be more happy, to be more content, and to feel more in control of your life, because change is constant around us. So it's not just about the practical change that you make, it's about the change in your mindset and your approach.
Yeah it's everywhere. It's outside of you, it's inside of you. And that wonderful figure of 8 between the two, you know, as the changes happen outside of you, how you take them in yourself, and how the changes that happen inside yourself, how you take that back into your life. And it creates this wonderful figure of 8 that can be very negative or very positive, depending on how you're working with change. Yeah. And a coach will help you kind of make that a positive figure of 8 rather than a painful figure of 8, you know, which I think is important, you know. And these are skills that once you've picked them up and learnt them with a coach, that you can take on into all your journeys of change, because like you said, Rash, it's constant and everywhere and all the time and forever.
Yeah. And the tool, like you say, the tools and the skills that you'll get through the coaching experience are things that you can take to any sort of part of your life. There'll be tools that you can take with you.
Yeah, I always say to my clients, like, they're in your back pocket now. Just whip them out when you need it. I'm going to teach you this one thing, and if you're ever in a situation where this comes up again, you can whip this little hint, tip, trick out and reapply it to something new, you know. So I think that's part of the aim of our podcast series overall, is to supply you guys with some hints, tips, tricks, tools, things to use, while also sharing some insights about our experiences as humans and as coaches, not just coaches, but humans as well. And so I think today we've decided to share a personal story of change each, and then also throw in some hints, tips, tricks that coaches might apply to similar stories. So I think that's where we're going to go to next. Yeah. Is it? Do you want to start?
Okay, so I think I found this a little bit difficult, actually, because the changes that I've experienced in my life have been quite slow and have taken time to bed in. So I couldn't really think of anything like that really clearly demonstrated a change, except for what I'm doing now. So the biggest change for me has been my journey to becoming a life coach, because so I'm just going to explain the journey, and then I'm going to talk through a few sort of the tools and of my reflections on it. So I did a degree in international relations. I didn't really know fully how to develop that career, the pathway from international relations, and I sort of struggled for a little while knowing what to do next. I knew I wanted to help people, and I ended up getting into the charity sector. I became a trainee, and I began wanting to help people, but actually being a rescuer, so not really having brilliant boundaries myself, and sort of laying myself on the line, and learning over time that actually that wasn't very helpful for anyone. It wasn't helpful for me, it wasn't helpful for the clients, and then becoming a helper. And somehow through that process I became promoted, I got more senior roles, but I never was quite sure that I was in the right place. I never felt like I'd earned it. And I did a sideways move, and I said, I'm going to start my own business, and I'm going to build a business around crafts. And then I didn't do that. I got promoted again, and again I still didn't feel like I was in the right place. I didn't really feel very comfortable, and I left that job and I said I'm going to become a life coach. So I did some coaching training in this job, and I really enjoyed it. It was skills that I'd already been using. I recognised it. I found it really fascinating. The coaching that I'd done with staff, I found really rewarding. And I said I'm going to start my own coaching business. I started another job, didn't do my coaching business. And then finally I was on the cusp of like, we're going to have another baby. And I was like, this is the time. I have to just give it a go. And I did, and I started my coaching business. And I think it's the first time I've really felt like happy in the job that I'm doing, that I know I'm in the right place. So it's taken a long time for me to get there, and I was reflecting on like what would have helped me and what were the barriers. And for me it was really all about my own limiting beliefs, because I had that idea about starting a craft business, and then I looked at other businesses and I was like, I'm not as good as that, or there's too much competition. And I just talked exactly. I just talked myself out of it. And then I kept telling myself I didn't have the time, and I don't know, just like really not putting it at the forefront. And what I was doing was I wasn't putting myself at the forefront.
Yeah, the time thing is definitely a priorities question. When people say they haven't got time, it's like, you have time, it's just not enough of a priority.
Exactly.
Time is time. If you want to make time for it, you will, for sure.
And it was about putting myself out there. It was about showing up.
Yeah, bravery.
For myself.
Yeah.
And I think, so I had a lot of limiting beliefs. And I think one of the really core ones was that I didn't feel like I was worth it.
Yeah.
Like I didn't feel like I was worth investing in for myself.
Not good enough for the journey.
I wasn't going to be a good enough whatever it was. The first time it was going to be crafts, and then the first time I tried looking at life coaching, it was I wasn't going to be a good enough life coach. And there's a bit of that sort of perfectionism as well that I've always had. So in terms of like what I've learned through life coaching, I think there's quite a few really good tools that would have helped me. So I think really looking at what was in my control and what was out of my control would have helped me. Like comparing myself to others is not helpful.
100%.
Because what they do is out of my control.
Yeah.
But what's in my control is actually maybe to liaise with other people who are in the industry, to find out how they do it, to to work together, to build alliances, or to think, just to give it a go, try.
I think when you look at others as well, when we compare ourselves to others, we don't have all the information. We've got this much, we've got a tiny Instagram picture of the information, and we put on that all of our fears and hopes and beliefs. Like, I should have this, they've probably done this, that was probably really easy for them, they probably just woke up looking like that and then isn't that so that you don't see that they took that photo 600 times from all different angles, and they spent an hour prepping it and getting ready for it. You just go, look at them just doing it, and I'm here struggling, and I suck, and it's taken me ages. And it's like, it's so dangerous to compare with other people, because you literally only have that tiny bit of information.
Absolutely.
You don't have the full scale, real dangerous stuff. Don't do that. Don't go comparing.
Yeah, and I think, absolutely. And most of the change is about reframing as well. So sort of actually being able to move forward into the future and envisage what it would be like if I did do it, and then work out actually what the barriers are from that point. What was the other reframing? I can't remember what the other one was that I was thinking of. But yeah, just, your viewpoint, and also understanding why, like really getting to the bottom of my why. So I think we talked about this not that long ago, that actually I've realised that, so I'm in a group of, I'm in some groups with other business mums, and a lot of them say that their why is their children. And I didn't really realise, but I could never really connect with it.
Yeah.
And what I realised was that actually my why is me. I'm nurturing my own self. So this is about giving myself that nurture, and saying, you can do this, and that I believe in myself enough to go forward with a business.
Yeah.
That's led by me. I'm the business. So that's my sort of story of change in a
nutshell. It's very relatable though, because I think we're all kind of facing these challenges where we want something, we want a change, and a business is a great example of that. We're working for somebody else or working in a particular thing, and we see that we want our lives to be different in a work sense, and the fear of change and the kind of the excuses we give ourselves. I mean, it's quite classic story, I don't have the time, followed by there's too much competition, and really deep down it's like, I don't love myself enough to give myself the permission to do this.
Yeah.
And then when you realise that, you open another can of worms of like, why don't I love myself enough? What is that? How do I fix that? So every time you kind of make a breakthrough, it's almost like you make a little bit more work for yourself, because you're like, oh, okay, I'm hanging on to this because I don't think I'm good enough because I have this issue or this thing, okay, I'm going to build that and work on that. And then you come back to tackling the business, and then you've got a new baby or other thing. You know what I mean? It's like, but it's like, that's why it's a journey of change, because it's a constant evolution, until you kind of get to a position where you're looking backwards going, wow, I did it. Because until you get there, you feel constantly not unbalanced, but you're on that new ground. And then when you hit the milestone, you're like, oh, I did it. Okay, cool. But the whole journey feels new ground and unstable and scary. And that's the nice thing about being with a coach, because at least they tell you that's normal.
And they're by your side as well along that journey. It's really reassuring. Definitely.
Yeah, to have someone just tell you that this is what change feels like, and it's not terrifying. It is sometimes terrifying, but also that same frightened feeling is also similar to the feeling of excitement. And if you kind of can harness that you're excited rather than being afraid or unsure or on new ground, if you can harness that, put it in a positive frame of excitement, then suddenly these journeys are easier to handle emotionally. There are little things you can do to kind of, like you say, reframe how you're looking at things and make that journey a very different emotional experience. So yeah, lots of stuff you can do. So okay, I guess I'll tell you my story of change, which is quite different, luckily.
Oh, great.
quite different. I'm not going to tell you all about how I started a business, because that would be a snap. Luckily, I'll tell you about something else. So a good few years ago, I had a job working for a clothing company that I loved. I loved my job. I was in a relationship, and I'd been with that person for probably about 7 years at that point. And I was living up in the Midlands. had a nice time. I had a nice flat with my lovely flatmate, and a domino effect ran through my life, and everything changed.
Okay.
And I suddenly, about 6 months down the line, found myself with a feeling of like my life is on fire. Everything is different. And it was just like the maddest time, and everything had to change. And it was, so what happened was, so I was working at a clothing company, and the owner was on maternity leave, and she's one of my best friends. And anyway, she'd come back from maternity leave, and it was like the job was a little bit different then, because I've been running things in her absence.
Right.
And then she was back, and it was like, okay, cool, collaboration time and stuff. But I felt like I wasn't bringing anything to the business that she wasn't bringing, if you know what I mean. Like, I suddenly didn't know what I was for there. And I was like, oh, this, because it's lovely to have her back and spend time with her and to work collaboratively with her and stuff. But just to feel like a bit redundant. I just felt a bit redundant. I was just like, oh, I used to like have to make all these decisions, and what really spurred me on in that job was trying to do the best for her, because she was my friend, and that was such a rewarding kind of situation where as like I could just ask her what she wanted me to do when she was there, and it wasn't as rewarding. You know what I mean? So that wasn't enough like of a change. I mean, that was a change, and I was like, okay, so the job feels different, and I kind of don't know where I'm at with that anymore, and I don't know what that means. And my relationship had gotten more and more difficult for us both, and I had started to drink quite a lot about it, which is my go-to. And anyway, I ended up seeing a counsellor about that, and then so the relationship ended. So then I was like, okay, so now my job is different, and now I don't have this partner that I've been with for 7 years who I thought I was going to get old with. So that's a bit of a shift.
Wow.
And similarly, at the same time, my dad, my parents were over in London, I'm in Birmingham at the time. My dad had a little accident. He had got an injury and suddenly couldn't walk.
Wow.
for a few months, like did something to he always had a terrible back, and he did something to his back, and he was like laid up in bed for a couple of months, stuck, and then having to kind of relearn some mobility stuff. And I was just mad worried because my parents are getting on a bit and that, and I just was away from them. I was just away. So suddenly I was going from Birmingham to London. I was going Birmingham to London every Friday after work, coming back Sunday night at like 10 o'clock at night, and doing that almost every weekend to like check in on them and be a bit closer, while trying to maintain a social life and hold down a job and be newly broken up from a big relationship. And I just remember sitting there thinking like, nothing is right. Nothing is right in my whole life right now. My job isn't right. My love life isn't right. My family isn't right. I don't know what I'm going to do. Everything's on fire. I just was like I want to say like the worst time, but it wasn't the worst time because I'm here now, and it started this journey of change, which was the most incredible journey of like, so I decided I had to move back to London. I was like, I have to move back to London because this time my dad's hurt himself a bit and he's recovering well, and that's great, but who knows what is around the corner for them. And maybe if I'm in Birmingham, they won't ask me to come and change a light bulb, and they'll get up a ladder. But if I'm in London, they'll let me do it and they won't fall off the ladder. Do you know what I mean? I was just kind of like, I need to put myself closer by. And then I was like, okay, which means I need to change jobs. So I need to work out what I'm doing and what I want to do. So it's a complete career readdress. And I was like, I really want to do something for myself and work on something that's mine, because I loved running Kate's business for her, but it was great to be like where the buck stopped for a bit. I enjoyed that feeling, and I thought, okay, well, if I can't work with my best friends in Birmingham, then I guess I want to do my own thing. I don't want to work for anybody else. That's nothing's going to compare with how good that was. So I guess I need to create my own culture of work. So that was a thing. And then obviously, like, I was single at 30 odd and going like, oh, I don't even know if I'm gonna find love. Like, honestly believed that I wasn't gonna find it again or with anybody else. I was just like, that's it, that was my shot. That was all my 20s eaten up in that relationship, and I guess all the good ones are taken, or all this crap.
This stuff comes in your head. Absolutely.
So I was afraid, and I was just like, okay, well, and that actually was the most freeing part. I was like, I'm going to have to just be my own partner. And that was where the heart of this journey really was a journey in change of me becoming my own partner, where I was just certain that the only thing I could keep in my life was going to be me, because I just watched everything change. And I was like, I can't cling on to anything or anybody, which initially feels like quite a negative idea. But what I learned was to cling on to myself.
Yep.
So I bought myself a ring, and I got engaged to myself.
Nice.
I bought myself a self-engagement ring. Shout out to Empty Casket Jewelry, which is where I got it from. It's like a little garnet stone and 2 skulls either side. And I was like, that's the one. And I made myself some promises. And I promised to never let myself down and turn up for myself, and I'm going to be there, show up for myself. I promised to hold my hand when I was sick, you know, be kind to myself when I was under the weather or whatever. I promised to never let anybody in my life that made me feel less than what I was, you know, and I married myself, and I was like, right, that's it. I'm committed to me now. That's it. It's just me and me for a bit. And it was when that I did that everything in my life got better. You know, everything changed, because then I could do all this stuff that I needed to do in order for that change to happen positively, because I could have just got heavy into drinking, because I love drinking. I'm not going to lie. It's my go-to. And I work with that problem regularly. You know, that's something that's in my life that I accept, and I work with it. But in hard times, it takes an extra bit of effort for me not to go down that road. I've got a predisposed kind of attraction to, that's where I like to bury my head, you know. So what was I saying? Yeah, it was a hell of a journey anyway, you know, just to kind of be showing up for myself, not going down that road and trying to fix those empty feelings by loving myself and by making myself a person that I wanted to be with for the rest of my life, because I've married myself. So I was like, okay, what does the person I want to be with forever look like? What are they like? So that journey is where I sort of throw my hints, tips and tricks. I did morning affirmations every day. I found a short video on YouTube of a guy just doing some stuff that you repeat back, and you just say, like, you know, I am strong, I am confident, I'm a liver of unconditional love, you know, and you feel like a dork. But it works, right? So I started doing that every day. I was like, this is ridiculous, but I feel like this is what I need to do, because I've got such negative internal chatter at that point. You know, I'm unlovable. I couldn't hold my relationship down. I was, you know, redundant at work in a way. And even though they wanted me, I couldn't even give them anything of value. You know, like so negative in my head, you know. So I had to replace that with something. So I get up every day and I just, it was like a drill. I was doing my drill every morning. I am this, I am that, I am this. And on bad days, I did it 2-3 times until I was, you know, able to start my day. So that was something that really, really helped. And I completely acknowledge that you may feel like a dork doing it. But, you know, I also completely support the strength and the power in doing something like that, because you start influencing the inside to make the change in your mind, and that influences the outside. So that was a huge thing. Practicing self-care a lot and accepting how I felt rather than punishing myself for how I felt. You know, I felt really pathetic and really awful and like a big failure. You know, there was so much of that going on, and just having to be like, that's how I feel. And that's, maybe it's not true. I can accept that maybe it's not true, but it's how I feel. So what am I going to do to make myself, what am I going to do to be kind to myself about it? Rather than being like, pull yourself together. You know, all these self-help books say you shouldn't do this. So that was something as well. Yeah, investing in self-care was a big one.
With those thoughts, like when you're telling yourself not to feel them, they just become stronger actually. Because you're not letting them be. Like it's mindfulness, isn't it? If you let them be and you let them go, then they're more likely to go. But the more you put worry and anxiety on anything, the more it just stays ingrained in your brain.
Yeah, it's true. I heard once on a self-help something or other, the analogy of it's like happiness is like the blue sky. It's always there. And what happens is our feelings are clouds that pass over it. So that feeling, but it's got a lovely transience to that analogy. Like you can really understand the transience of your emotions and actually don't grip onto them and they will pass.
Yeah.
Like relax and like lean into it a little bit.
And it's okay. And, you know, there will be clouds in the sky.
Yeah, and there will be full-on storms.
Yeah.
Hailstorms,
Yeah.
and all kinds of nonsense, you
Yeah.
know, electric storms, but they will pass, you know. I did a full re-education of myself in that time, and I utilised YouTube like a crazy woman, and I watched so many TED Talks of all these people on journeys of change and self-help, and you know why people do things, and things about relationships and things about kinds of attachments. I just dove in on everything. I doubled down on it all because I was like, there are going to be lessons out there for me. There are going to be things that's going to help me. I know half of this is going to be dross, but I'm committed to finding the gold. I went on a treasure hunt, but I did find things in that journey, in that time, that pulled me through that journey of change and have pulled me through again and again and again.
Yeah.
Things like the blue sky analogy, you know, you're listening to a 10-minute self-help video and they'll say one thing and you're like, that's my
That
take
makes
home.
sense,
That's
yeah.
my thing.
Yeah.
I'll write that in my journal and I'll read that tomorrow after my 300 self-affirmations I have to do before I get out of bed. Otherwise, I'm not getting in the shower kind of thing, you know. So, yeah, I went on a full YouTube education, which I recommend. Like, I think start reading and looking, you know, open the door for opportunity, open yourself up to the possibility of change. Start listening and reading and looking, and you don't have to believe it all, and it doesn't all have to be for you, but just start. You'll find something. You'll find a through line, a chord, something will pull you, you know. So that's a big part of that journey of change for me as well. Yeah, and then I just I got really good at boundaries as well at that point, because my previous relationship, I think that's where I put a lot of it down to it sort of going wrong, is that we were both really bad at boundaries. We were both really bad at saying, okay, that's enough from you.
Yeah.
You know, and also I got familiar with what it is like to be with somebody who can't hold their boundaries and how damaging I can be if they're not holding their boundaries. And I carried so much guilt about things that I said or did, mainly because I was left unchecked in a way. And not that I'm blaming him or anything. I'm just saying that boundaries are that important on both sides.
Yeah.
You need to have yours and they need to have theirs,
Yeah.
and that's healthy. You know, so I learned a lot about boundaries and worked on that in my time alone, so that if I ever came into another relationship or in all my friendships and so on, I could exercise boundaries and keep myself safe and keep the people I love safe from me when I'm on one. You know, because I got into ugly places. I mean, that was ugly stuff, you know, kind of when the change was coming about and I didn't know what to do with it, and I was kind of free falling and stuff. So, you know, having great boundaries and people in your life with great boundaries at times like that is so helpful.
Yeah. Because
people stop you and say, oh, I'm checking you there, that's enough. And you're like, oh, okay, maybe that is enough. I'll put the wine down then. But yeah, that's my sort of take on my story of change, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, what you was just saying about boundaries there, it's really interesting because I've got a friend who's got really, really good boundaries, and I've known her for years and years and years. And in the beginning, I always found it so hard when she would put those in place. And I always knew that they were important and that they were coming from a really good place, but they just would get my back up immediately. It took quite a bit of time of my own personal development, of my own understanding of like what sort of trigger points those things were hitting, to really understand that actually what she was saying wasn't targeting me, but it was helpful to me in the long run.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because you're in it and you're like, I'm just firing out my emotions. This is how I feel and you should just accept me for how I am. But actually, you know, what you need is someone to check that, because you can't just fly around, you know, whatever you want to say, whenever you want to say it.
Yeah.
That might be your experience, but it's not necessarily true for anyone else or helpful for anyone else.
Yeah, I think like having, you know, obviously emotional times where your feelings are going nuts and flying around and everything, it happens in life. And having a constructive and healthy place to express those and honour those is super important. And that doesn't necessarily mean at your mate's house at 3 a.m. when you've turned up because you need a friend, you know. Do you know what I mean?
You have to be here for me right now.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's like, and that's hard because when you're in those places, it's hard to identify what's helpful and what is constructive and what is a safe place for those emotions. And that's where people with boundaries are really useful, because they'll really help you. I think that's the thing as well, is like sometimes when we're going through a hard time, especially for me at that time, you know, you start going to places where you know people are going to be on a similar kind of path. You go for a hedonistic, you know, people that aren't going to care that you're a mess. Yeah. People that are just going to drink with you, regardless of how many nights you've been out that week, and not say like, are you right, mate? You know, whatever. You start gyrating towards this pathway that isn't those boundaries, isn't helpful. And I think it's because sometimes we don't want the light shone on. But turn the light on. It's better. Just get it on. Because that's where change is. That's where change and growth is. If you hit the hedonism and hide those things from yourself and just go down that, just reinforce it, just get in that echo chamber of like, this is just what we're party, and don't think about it, and you know, all of that, you won't get change. That's where you'll be, and that's where you'll stay. You know, so takes a bit of bravery. To show up for yourself. Yeah.
That's an amazing story of change.
Thanks, man.
That sort of re-educating yourself, connecting with yourself, marrying yourself. It's so amazing.
Thanks. Yeah, it was a big it was a big journey. It was like over a year. I mean, I went to counselling for my upset in my relationship. I think it was December 16. And Tom and I got together. I moved to London. Well, I got together with Tom. I think it was like the end of October 17. So from breaking up with my previous partner and my changing my job and my dad getting poorly and moving to London all happened basically over that year. So, you know, I think I officially moved April 18 back, and I moved in here. I wasn't going to, I was going to move in with my parents, but I stayed here for a few weeks while I was going to get my room ready over at my mum and dad's, and I just didn't leave. But it's all right. Tom and I both have great boundaries, so we said that was fine. But yeah, no, it was probably about 18 months all in, that whole thing. But what a crazy time. I had a rock bottom moment at the start of that journey. That's what kicked that off. I had a rock bottom moment. Yeah, I had a work Christmas party, and I'd gone to the bar. And I ordered 2 pints. I think it was 2 pints. No, it was a pint, 2 shots and a whiskey.
Oh, wow.
And my friend Kate came over and she was like, who are those for? And I was like, they're for me. And we'd been out at a Christmas party. We'd gone for dinner, had loads to drink. We'd been drinking since about 5 p.m.
Okay.
It was about 11 o'clock at night, maybe midnight. And we've gone to an after, to a bar, all the work lot together. And I just suddenly was like, this is not okay. Because I was like, I'd do my 2 shots at the bar, drink my whiskey on the way over to everybody, and then have my pint till I go and get another drink. And I was like, this is not all right, is it? Who are these drinks for? I'm like, other people? I don't know what you want me to say. Yeah, and I kind of looked around that night, and had some older friends there that were on particularly challenging journeys. And I kind of saw a bit of myself in them. Like, if I didn't change now, I was going to have to do what they're doing. One of them was getting a divorce from a relationship, and I saw some parallels there. And one of them had to recently have a restart because, you know, of some other things that had gone on in her life. And I thought, gosh, I could easily go on those 2 journeys from this point. And I just thought, I better do it now. I better change now. I better stop this. You know, I kind of had a sobering rock bottom moment. I was just, and I'd been out a lot, drinking a lot, but that was the time that I saw that this has become unhealthy. And so then I had to be like, okay, why am I doing this? I was like, oh, because everything's on fire. And then my dad got hurt himself after that.
Wow.
Yeah, that was more about the relationship and the job than other things. But yeah, I was like, oh, I'm unhealthy. Yeah.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because I think a lot of people sort of put quite a bit into this rock bottom moment, like as a catalyst for change. And I think that can happen with some people, but not always.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think, but sometimes people can really see that as the only catalyst for change, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. I've definitely heard people saying, oh, they'll just get to their rock bottom and then things will change. And it's like, why does it have to go that far?
Yeah.
What is it? I mean, obviously, a clear moment of realisation is helpful. It doesn't have to be your rock bottom, but a good moment of self-awareness can shock you into making some decisions. But I guess that's part of recognising the readiness for change. I guess that's part of it, is that there's a skill you can cultivate in that if you kind of listen enough to yourself. And it is an exercise in self-listening, because our emotions are here to guide us. They're not here to annoy us or to push us into weird behaviour. They're here to tell us something's wrong. When you feel like you want to go shopping and you're like, I don't need another pair of shoes, why am I sitting here looking at shoes? Yes, why are you? What's missing? Stop buying the shoes for a second and take a step back and have a little listen, because something is trying to tell you something. And it's not always huge, but who else do you have if you don't have yourself? Like, who else are you going to listen to if they're upset? You got to listen to you, right?
And I think that's interesting in terms of the rock bottom concept as well, because it's often other people who say that person is going to get to their rock bottom and then they'll see. And it's often because those people don't know what to do to help you with that change. They feel like they've done everything. And so they're at their rock bottom. So then they're waiting for you to catch up to where they are at. But with your own readiness for change, if people are out of sync with you, then you're not going to be able to relate to them about where you're at, and they're not going to be able to help you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, definitely. I mean, we sort of surround ourselves with reflections in a way. Our friends are always a little bit of a reflection of where we're at and what we're doing, and sometimes you feel like you're not relating to your group, and that's a sign that you've changed inside. And perhaps, although you'll probably still be friends with those people if you want to, you might need to grow in some other areas of friendship, grow some new friendships, sow some new seeds, and it's those feelings are the things to look for. They're our little signposts on our journeys of change, or our journeys of anything, those little moments where you go, oh, I felt that, what was that? Oh, I didn't like that, or oh, that person did that and that made me feel whatever, and this friend always does that and I'm never happy when I leave hanging out with them. Don't just feel that and then go, okay, just have a little scrape under that and just see if you can identify something you can change easily and fix. I wish I'd done it. I wish I'd done it, because that journey of change for me was everything on fire, and it felt like it. Everything was hot, everything was rubbish, it was all like going on, and I was just tizzing, like spinning through it. And I think, I could have seen it, not like seen it coming, but I wish I'd listened to myself earlier, because I knew I was upset. I knew it wasn't right. I knew things weren't quite on par in the relationship. I knew I wasn't very satisfied in the job thing, but I loved the friends. I had great friends there, and I loved being part of that team. And it would have been painful for me to kind of go, as much as I love this team, I probably should move on in my career in some way. That was a hard thing, and it was only because all the change happened at once. It forced my hand. It kind of all balled up into this massive movement. Had it just been the job on its own, I probably would have stayed for another couple of years, because I was comfortable, and just been a bit sad and a bit miserable, been a bit unfulfilled, and I wish I just could have listened a little bit. And I try to now. That's what I've learned from that journey of change, is when I'm recognizing a readiness for change in myself, that's what I'm looking for. Those little kind of feelings, I mean, I get accused of overthinking stuff because I'm forever like having a little look, but that's just me. I'm not overthinking things. I'm just investigating. I'm always investigating, but then I mean, that's not for everybody, but investigating sometimes is good for everybody.
Yeah, well, I think the more you understand yourself, the easier it is to do anything, really, isn't it? To interact with the world, to know what's happening, to know where you're at. Sometimes it's about just being where you are, rather than making a change.
Yeah, well, that's an internal change, isn't it? Just kind of being happy, being accepting of where you are. Perhaps that's a journey in itself, because some people just aren't, you know, and maybe change externally isn't the answer to some of those uncomfortable, squeezy feelings. Maybe it's internal.
I think everybody sort of has their own paths, and there are, you know, different things going on, and it can be, I mean, you know, you've been on a really quite intense journey, and I personally also have, I've had like 15 years of therapy. So you get to know yourself. But I think day to day, in general life, not everyone has been through any of that sort of level of looking at themselves.
Self-investigation, yeah.
And I think that's where working with a helper is so helpful, because they can be that sort of person right next to you, helping you to reflect and investigate, and ask different questions that you might not initially think of. And yeah, it can be that just that really small thought that can build like quite a big seed of not a big seed, that really small seed of a thought, which can really build into something that can transform.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think as well, having somebody with you on your journey of change is, you know, really reassuring in that you're going to possibly go to some scary places.
Oh, absolutely.
Some dark places. You know, I always say, stick your galoshes on, we're going in the swamp. Like, that's sometimes what it feels like. Whatever's down there that you've not been dealing with, or you've just been sat on, you know, sometimes you've got to put your big waders on and get in your swamp and just kind of have a look. And doing that alone sometimes is so challenging, and I've done it a few times. Gone a bit too deep on my own and just been like, I'm in a funk now for 2 days. I've been looking at stuff and I'm like, whoa. You know, where you're with a helper, with a, you know, a counsellor or a coach or somebody who's trained in that kind of work, they're going to hold your hand and hold your heart, you know, and just kind of let you know that it's good work you're doing. And I think sometimes that's all you need the reminder of, is to know that it's worth it. Yeah. It's worth it. It's good work, and you're being brave, and you're being strong, and that's awesome, and you're being vulnerable, and that's excellent, and you're gonna get the download of joy after we've cleaned this up, you know, after we've gotten through it. They just remind you of why you're doing the work, rather than getting dragged along with the scary things you're looking at. Remember why you're doing the work, you know.
Yeah,
it's helpful stuff. But
and as a helper and a guide, you're going to be able to know that actually they will come through that on the other side, and what kind of benefit that they're going to get.
Life is too short and too precious to be places you feel stuck, places you're unhappy, places you're miserable. It's just no good. Bin it. Don't have it. Change.
I mean, I think for me, it's a slightly different thing in terms of I see the future as more of a contented life, and being able to enjoy the moments in life and accept the times where things might not be going exactly right, but feel equipped to deal with them.
Yeah, feeling capable.
Yeah. So it's not like the process of change and going through that process of change is amazing, but after that there are going to be still dips and troughs, and you know, life isn't going to be like one amazing dream.
Yeah, one smooth sail. No.
So you know, I think once you've been through that process of change and you feel equipped, it's so enabling, it's so empowering.
Yeah, there's so much power to have from it. You're so right, it's empowering, 100%, that you can drive your own life.
Yes.
You know, take the wheel a little bit, you know,
And you know, you're on the road, you can't control necessarily what anybody else is doing, but you know where you're going, you know how you can negotiate that. Yep. It's a completely different type of journey.
It's a completely different life experience. You know, rather than everything happening to you and you kind of bouncing between event and event, you know, you can take the wheel and you can drive, and you can kind of, like you say, you have control over what you do, and taking that control is just incredibly empowering. It's excellent, you know. My mum always used to say, oh, here we go, mother's wisdom. This is something you're going to get over the series.
Here we go.
Over the next few episodes, I always go, my mum always used to say, there's a lid for every pot, Kelly. You know. My mum always used to say, choose. Don't let it happen to you.
Yes.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you might not like what you're choosing between, but choose.
Yes.
But you decide.
Yeah.
Don't let it happen to you. Don't just get pushed into this or that. You know, even if it's going to be the thing you don't want, choose to take it. Don't just let it happen to you, you know. Mama Lynn's wisdom for you all. Got a lot of that to look forward to. I think like 80% of my coaching practice is things my mum once said. No. No, it isn't. I'm joking.
Where did you train?
My mum's kitchen.
Sorry.
No, not at all. But yeah, she's wise though. She's a wise woman. Yeah, for sure. I mean, she's mad as a box of frogs, but she's wise.
There's always nuggets in there.
Yeah, she's probably going to be our first listener, and she's going to be like, I don't know, pleased she got a mention, but also slightly offended that I just called her mad. I don't know. So I think, you know, just to sum up in some way about our sort of kicking off this season.
Oh, yes.
I think some of the stuff we've touched on today, being as we talked about change in a kind of a general sense, will be themes that we see come up a lot.
Yeah.
Like we mentioned boundaries and vulnerability, and honouring yourself and self-love. And these are all going to be like big topics for us, I think, because it's very much in the coaching wheelhouse. It's the kind of things that you can work on and use to bolster yourself in a journey of change. So
absolutely, yeah.
I think that's the kind of things you can expect to see coming up a lot. So what's your top take home, Rash, from this?
I think my top take home is it's really, really important to connect with yourself and understand what is really holding you back. And like you said before, you know, when you use the excuse of I haven't got enough time, what's really going on is, for me, it was that I didn't really believe that I was worthy of doing the thing. So it's about, like you say, scratching the surface, digging a little bit deeper and finding out what's really going on.
Yeah. Have a little poke around in the swamp. See what's down there. I think my take home for recognising readiness for change, cultivating readiness for change, is exploration, definitely, in a sort of general sense. Yeah, I mean, definitely within yourself, 100%. If you're feeling a little like maybe I want to change or I'm not very happy with this, exploration, not just in self, but in the areas that you'd like to change. You know, like I said, I went on a huge YouTube. I just absorbed stuff. I just looked at, because there will be nuggets and there will be threads and things will resonate with you. And when stuff resonates with you, note it. Yeah. And then see how that grows, because your subconscious does a lot of work for you. So even just like opening yourself up to new information is a huge thing for cultivating readiness for change and recognizing readiness for change, because you start getting new ideas and new influences, you know. So I think that would be my sort of step one, explore self. Step two, explore out and take in some new information and see how that shakes things up. And maybe nothing happens, maybe everything happens, who knows. But, you know, start kind of breaking the regular a little bit. Yes. Start taking in some new information. Yeah. You know, that would be my, next step. Great. Cool. Well, thank you. Thank you. I guess that's us. Episode 1 in the can. Woo woo. Thanks for listening to Unstuck, Unlimited and Unleashed. This was episode 1, Change and Where to Find It. We hope it's been useful and maybe even inspiring. If you like what you've heard, find out more about what Rash and I are up to at the links in the bio. And be sure to follow at Act and Solve and at Ugly Coaching on Instagram and Facebook. Thanks again. We'll catch you next time on Unstuck, Unlimited and Unleashed.